Why does your jacket smell like someone else's cologne? Marcus Cole was already waiting in his hillside estate at 3:17 quiet, controlled, dangerous. Evelyn thought her warehouse interview could stay off his radar. She was wrong. For 6 months, his security system had logged her every exit and every smile that wasn't his. The hillside estate looked open from a distance. Glass walls, wide driveways, endless sky behind it. Freedom, if you didn't know better. But the moment you passed the gates, everything changed. Cameras followed every turn of the road. Motion sensors breathed quietly under the gravel. A security badge was required even to cross from the main house to the guest wing. On paper, it was protection. In reality, it was a world where nothing moved without being noticed. Evelyn had learned the rhythm of it quickly. Which cameras rotated every 40 seconds, which hallways were blind for half a step, which guards looked away when she passed, and which ones logged her presence without blinking. She wasn't afraid of them. She was aware of them, and awareness in this place was the price of staying. She managed the private residence with efficiency that bordered on invisibility, schedules, supplies, maintenance, staff rotations, emergency drills. Everything ran because she made sure it did. And yet, despite all that responsibility, she was never quite free inside it. The house trusted her. The system did not. Some mornings, she would step onto the balcony and let the dry California wind hit her face. It was the only place where she felt unobserved, even though she knew she wasn't. The illusion of space mattered. It kept her steady. It reminded her she still existed outside of permissions and protocols. Marcus called it safety. She called it conditional, because safety here came with rules that were never written down. Stay predictable. Stay reachable. Stay within the logic of his world. And most of all, never make a move he couldn't explain to himself. Evelyn understood him better than most people did, not because she admired him, but because she lived inside the structure he built. She saw how control wasn't a hobby for him. It was survival. His life had taught him that anything untracked became a threat. Anything unknown became a weakness. That included her. She never said it out loud, but she felt it. In the way his gaze lingered when she changed her routine. In the way the security report subtly adjusted after she took a longer walk. In the way he didn't ask where she had been, but always knew when she returned. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't slam doors. He didn't make scenes. He did something worse. He waited. And waiting, in a man like him, was never neutral. Evelyn had once thought that quiet meant calm. She had learned that quiet, in this house, meant calculation. The longer his silence stretched, the more carefully he was choosing his words, the more power they would carry when they came. That was why she had kept the warehouse interview to herself. Not because it was wrong, not because she felt guilty, but because she knew what it represented to him. A blind spot. A place where she acted without his system noticing first. She had applied under a different email, used a public terminal, chosen a partner company that didn't report directly to Marcus's logistics network. It wasn't rebellion. It was preparation. She needed something that belonged to her, a future that didn't require his approval to exist. And she knew, deep down, that if she told him, he would try to stop it. Not with anger, not with threats, with logic, with concern, with reasons that sounded reasonable enough to make her doubt herself. That was what made him dangerous. Not cruelty, conviction. The estate staff believed he was generous. They said he paid well. That he protected his people. That once you were under his wing, nothing touched you. And that was true. But protection, when it becomes a cage, stops being protection. Evelyn had lived long enough to know the difference. She didn't want to escape him. She wanted to stand beside him without shrinking. Every hallway she walked felt like a reminder that her life was technically safe and emotionally suspended. She could exist here, but she could not grow. Growth required uncertainty, and uncertainty was the one thing this house was designed to erase. Sometimes, she wondered if Marcus understood that, or if his idea of love was built the same way his security system was built. Layers, barriers, locks disguised as reassurance. There is a kind of relationship that cannot survive on emotion alone. When one person holds power, love must be disciplined, it must be structured, it must be practiced with restraint, not instinct. Otherwise, affection becomes authority without anyone noticing the shift. Evelyn didn't have words for that yet. She only had a feeling. A tightness in her chest whenever she imagined telling him she wanted something that didn't include him. She passed through the west corridor, her heels soft against polished stone. A guard nodded to her. Another marked something on his tablet. She didn't slow. She never did. Slowing invited attention. Moving like you belonged made you invisible. That was how she survived. The irony was that Marcus loved her for that very quality, her steadiness, her independence, her refusal to be impressed by him. She didn't orbit his power. She moved beside it, and that made him uneasy. He had spent his life building systems that responded to him, people who reacted to him, environments that bent to his decisions. Evelyn did not bend. She adapted. And adaptation was not obedience. It unsettled him more than defiance ever could. When she returned that afternoon, she could feel the shift in the air before she even saw him. The guards were quieter. The house felt still in a way that meant someone was waiting. Marcus stood in the main living space, looking out toward the hills. His posture was calm. His hands were relaxed, but nothing about him was idle. He didn't turn immediately when she entered. He never did when something mattered. She set her bag down with the same care she always used, controlled, unhurried. Her heart was steady, but her awareness sharpened. This was not a conversation. It was an assessment. This house didn't hold arguments. It held interrogations without raised voices. Marcus finally turned. His eyes moved to her face, then to her jacket. Not lingering, not staring, just noting, like a man reviewing data he hadn't asked for. Evelyn met his gaze. She had learned that silence was safer than defense. Explanation gave him leverage. Stillness gave her space. She thought of the warehouse manager's handshake, the smell of oil and metal, the unfamiliar sense of standing somewhere that did not belong to him. It had felt ordinary, and extraordinary for that very reason. Ordinary meant unclaimed. She didn't realize how much she needed that until she tasted it. The house, by contrast, felt like a beautiful machine, perfectly calibrated, perfectly indifferent to her internal life. People often confuse freedom with space. They think wide rooms and open land create independence. But freedom is not physical. It is psychological. It exists only where choice is not monitored. Here, every choice left a footprint. Evelyn had started to feel like a pattern instead of a person. Marcus's world was built on control because control had saved him before. He knew how to protect. He knew how to contain. What he did not know was how to trust something that didn't submit to his structure. And Evelyn was exactly that. Not rebellious, uncontainable. That was why he watched her differently than anyone else. Not because he doubted her loyalty, but because he couldn't map her future without himself in it. She felt the weight of that now. the unspoken question, the quiet tension that hung between them like static. This was not about where she had gone. It was about what her going meant. About the possibility that she was building a life that did not require his presence to feel complete. And that, for a man like Marcus, was not a small thing. It was a fracture in the logic of his world. Evelyn straightened her shoulders. She wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of what staying too long might turn her into. Afraid that safety would slowly become dependency. Afraid that comfort would replace choice. She had seen that pattern before, and she had promised herself she would never live inside it again. This house offered protection. But protection without autonomy was just another kind of risk. She stood in the center of the room, waiting. Not submissive, not confrontational, just present. The silence stretched. Marcus's eyes held something that wasn't anger. It wasn't accusation. It was something closer to loss, as if he sensed, before she ever said a word, that her life was beginning to move in a direction he could not command. And for the first time since Evelyn had stepped into his world, she understood something with quiet clarity. What unsettled him wasn't that she might leave. It was that he could no longer pretend she belonged to him. Marcus didn't move closer. He didn't need to. The space between them already felt occupied by something heavier than words. Evelyn stood where she was, her hands relaxed at her sides, her back straight, her breathing steady. She knew this posture. It was the posture of someone who refused to shrink without turning the moment into a fight. "Your schedule changed today," Marcus said calmly. "The south gate logged you out at 2:14. You came back through the east entrance at 4:07. She looked at him. "I took a longer route. That wasn't the question. He didn't accuse. He observed, like a man describing weather, not behavior." Evelyn stepped forward and placed her bag on the table. Slowly, deliberately. "I didn't disappear," she said. "I left, and I came back." Marcus tilted his head slightly, as if adjusting a lens. "That area isn't within our regular patrol radius," he replied. "I don't like blind zones. I don't like being tracked." She answered. The words landed without force, but they didn't need any. The truth had weight of its own. Marcus folded his arms loosely, not defensive, not aggressive. Controlled. Everything about him was controlled. "You're safe here," he said. "You don't need to put yourself in unnecessary situations." Evelyn met his eyes. "I don't need to be watched to be safe. That's not what I said. It's what you meant." Silence followed. The kind that wasn't empty. The kind that waited for someone to bend first. Marcus finally spoke. "Why didn't you tell me where you were going?" "Because you would have turned it into permission," she thought. But she didn't say that. "Because I didn't need to," she said instead. "And because I wanted to know if I still could." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "You manage this estate," he said. "You oversee sensitive systems. Your movements matter. My movements matter to your system," she replied. "Not to my right to exist outside of it." He took a step closer. Not threatening, not intimate, strategic. "You're not just anyone here. Evelyn, your presence affects security. My presence affects your comfort," she said quietly. "There's a difference." His eyes darkened. Not with anger, with something closer to loss. "You think I'm trying to control you," he said. "I think you're afraid to let me be uncontrolled. That's not the same thing. It is when I'm the one paying for it." Marcus turned toward the window, looking out at the hills as if they could explain something he couldn't put into words. "I protect what matters," he said. "That's not a flaw. Protection doesn't give you ownership," she replied. "I never said it did. You act like it does. Another silence. This one stretched longer. Marcus exhaled slowly. You're asking for a level of freedom that doesn't exist in my world? I'm asking for a level of freedom that exists in mine, Evelyn said. And I'm not willing to give it up to stay comfortable. Comfort isn't what I'm offering. Neither is choice. He turned back to her. What exactly do you want? She didn't hesitate. A life that doesn't depend on your approval. A job that pays me without tying me to your system. A way out that doesn't look like betrayal. His expression shifted. A way out, yes, she said. Not because I want to leave, but because I need to know I can. Marcus's voice dropped. And what happens if you take it? Then I take responsibility for my own life. And if something happens to you, then it happens, she said. Like it happens to everyone who doesn't live behind cameras. He stepped closer now, just enough that she could feel the tension between them. You think I'm limiting you, he said. I think I'm keeping you alive. Evelyn looked up at him. And I think you're confusing those two things because it makes you feel necessary. The words were sharp, but not cruel, honest. That was what made them dangerous. Marcus didn't respond immediately. His eyes searched her face, as if trying to decide whether she was naive or brave. You walked into places today that don't have our protection, he said. That alone puts you at risk. I walk into this house every day knowing I'm being watched, she replied. That's also a risk. You call that danger, I call it erosion. His brow furrowed. Of what of myself? The air shifted. Something fragile had been named. A door opened quietly behind them. Ethan Miller stepped in. He paused when he sensed the tension, then moved forward anyway. Marcus, he said. We need to talk. Marcus didn't turn. Not now. It can't wait. Ethan replied. Your security team flagged increased surveillance patterns around Evelyn's movements. That's not protocol. Marcus finally looked at him. It is when someone's routine changes. It's not, Ethan said. It's escalation. Evelyn glanced at Ethan, then back to Marcus. You're tracking me more closely because I moved slightly outside your map. Marcus didn't deny it. Ethan's voice was steady, but firm. This is exactly what I warned you about, he said. The more you tighten control, the more unstable the situation becomes. She's walking into unsafe territory, Marcus replied. She's walking into her own life, Ethan countered. There's a difference. Marcus's gaze hardened. You don't understand what's at stake. Ethan met his eyes. I understand that you're losing your ability to tell concern from possession. Silence. That one was heavy. Evelyn felt something shift inside her. Not fear. Clarity. I'm not your asset, she said quietly. I'm not your liability. I'm not your responsibility. Marcus turned back to her. You matter to me. I know, she said. That's why this is so dangerous. His jaw clenched. You think caring is dangerous. I think caring becomes dangerous when it stops listening. He took a breath, as if steadying himself. You could get hurt out there. I could get lost in here, she replied. Another pause. Ethan spoke again. Softer now. Marcus, if you keep treating her autonomy like a threat, you'll become the threat. Marcus didn't respond. Evelyn watched him, realizing something that unsettled her more than any argument. He wasn't angry. He was afraid, not of losing her, of losing control over the part of the world that still made sense to him. I'm not asking you to stop caring, she said. I'm asking you to stop deciding for me. You think that's all this is? He asked. Decision-making, I think that's how it starts. His voice lowered. and how it ends. She met his gaze, with someone smaller than they were when they arrived. The room went still. Ethan exhaled quietly. "That's your answer," he said. Marcus didn't move. His silence wasn't agreement. It was resistance. The kind that came from a man who had never had to loosen his grip on anything that mattered to him. Evelyn realized then that this wasn't about jealousy. Not really. This was about territory, about who had the right to define the edges of her life, and whether protection was something she received, or something that was being used to justify crossing lines no one had agreed to. She held her ground, not with anger, not with pleading, but with something steadier, selfhood. And in that moment, the question hung between them, unspoken but unavoidable. Was this care, or was it control wearing a softer face? The cafe sat at the edge of town, where the road stopped pretending to be polished. No gates, no guards, no cameras turning their heads when she moved. Just a narrow wooden door, a bell that rang too loud, and the smell of coffee that wasn't filtered through security glass. Evelyn pushed it open and felt something loosen in her chest. People talked without lowering their voices. Someone laughed too loudly near the window. A woman argued with a barista about oat milk. Ordinary sounds, ordinary problems. She chose a small table near the shelf of used books. The chair wobbled. She didn't fix it. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel measured. A man stood behind the counter, arranging paper cups in uneven lines. Early 30s? Soft voice, tired eyes in a kind way. He noticed her waiting. "Hey, sorry, first time here." She nodded. "Yeah, then you get the rule for free," he said. "Sit anywhere. Stay as long as you want. No one will rush you." She almost smiled. He brought her coffee without asking for her name. No questions about where she worked. No sideways glances at her clothes. No curiosity disguised as kindness. After a while, he came back, holding his phone loosely in his hand. "I'm Noah," he said. "By the way, Evelyn." He hesitated, then turned his screen toward her, a black and white square. "If you ever need anything," he said, "that's our community group. Jobs, cheap rooms, book swaps, legal clinics on Sundays, and a few women's shelters, off the record." She stared at the code. He didn't explain more. He didn't ask why she might need it. He just placed the phone on the table, let her scan it, and stepped back. "No pressure," he added. "It's just there." Evelyn saved the link. Her fingers trembled slightly. This was what normal help looked like. No contracts, no expectations, no protection that came with invisible strings. They spoke about books, about the desert heat, about nothing important. It felt strange how safe that was. An hour later, her phone buzzed once, then again. She didn't answer. She already knew. Back at the estate, the security system didn't call it jealousy. It called it a risk anomaly. A line in a report, external contact, unmapped location, extended duration, no surveillance coverage. The blind spot had triggered alerts across 3 departments. Marcus stood in front of the screen, reading the summary without blinking. Location type public venue, owner Noah Whitman, no criminal history, no registered threats. And yet, the space existed outside his grid. That was enough. When Evelyn returned to the cafe 2 days later, Noah was wiping tables. "You're back," he said, surprised but careful not to sound hopeful. "I like the chair," she replied. "The broken one. It doesn't pretend to be stable." He laughed quietly. They spoke again. About nothing. About everything that wasn't dangerous. Then the bell rang. The air shifted before she saw him. Marcus entered like a shadow that didn't belong to the light. No guards, no raised voice, just presence. The room didn't fall silent, but Evelyn did. He walked toward their table, his steps unhurried, his face neutral. No anger, no accusation. Control wrapped in calm. "Evelyn," he said. She stood. "You're late," he added gently. "I didn't give you a schedule today." "I know." His eyes flicked briefly to Noah. Noah looked at Evelyn. "Is everything okay?" "Yes," she said too quickly. Marcus offered a polite nod. "Marcus Cole." Noah shook his hand. "Nice to meet you." Marcus released his grip first. "I received a security report," Marcus said, turning back to Evelyn. "Your location triggered a system alert." "Your system shouldn't be here," she replied. "This place wasn't classified as safe. It's a cafe. It's outside coverage, that's the point." He lowered his voice. "You need to leave." Not shouted, not demanded, stated, like policy. Noah shifted. "She's welcome here." Marcus didn't look at him. "I'm responsible for her safety." Evelyn felt something familiar press against her ribs. That shrinking, that soft erasure. "I didn't ask you to be," she said. "You didn't need to." He placed his hand lightly on the back of her chair, not touching her, claiming space. "You're coming with me." Noah spoke quietly. She said she didn't ask. Marcus finally met his eyes. "This is not your concern." "No," Noah replied. "But she is." Evelyn's throat tightened. She reached for her bag. Marcus stepped aside to clear the path. A gentleman, an order disguised as courtesy. As they walked out, Evelyn glanced back once. Noah didn't follow. He didn't chase. He simply stood there, holding the cloth in his hands, watching her leave without trying to decide for her. Outside, the wind was louder. Marcus opened the car door for her. She hesitated, then sat. The door closed softly. The engine started. She stared at her hands. They were steady, but something inside her wasn't. The QR code burned in her pocket, a square made of choices behind her. The cafe door closed, unwatched, unlogged, still open. Marcus didn't follow her into the room. He waited until she was already standing near the window, her back to him, her arms crossed like she was holding herself together. "I don't like surprises," he said. "I'm not a report," Evelyn replied. "You don't get to audit me. You disappeared into a space we don't monitor. That's called living." He took a step forward, not too close, close enough to remind her he could. "You met someone," he said. She didn't deny it. "Yes." His jaw tightened. "A stranger. A person," she corrected. "That matters. You didn't tell me. I wasn't asking permission." Silence. Then, quietly, "Why him?" The question wasn't about Noah. It was about fear. "Because he didn't look at me like I was a risk," she said. "He looked at me like I was human." Marcus exhaled slowly. "You think I don't? I think you look at me like something that could be lost. That's because you can be. So can everyone," she said. "That's not love. That's anxiety with power." His eyes darkened. "You don't understand what you mean to me. Then tell me," she said, without turning it into a justification. He hesitated. Then the truth slipped out. Not carefully shaped, not noble. "You're the only person who isn't afraid of me," he said. "You don't flatter, you don't beg, you don't pretend I'm a hero. You see me, and you stay. That's not normal. That's rare." She swallowed. "That doesn't make me yours, I know," he said. "But it makes you dangerous to lose." There it was. Not love. Fear wrapped in admiration. I don't want to lose you, he continued. And I don't trust a world that doesn't understand what you are. What am I? She asked. Unprotected. Her chest tightened. You're saying that like it's a flaw. It's a reality. And your solution is to own the shield, to hold it, he said. For you? She shook her head. That's not holding a shield. That's holding me. He stepped closer. Evelyn, I'm not trying to cage you. You are, she said. You're just doing it with kindness. He flinched slightly. You think I'm manipulating you. I think you're convinced you're right. She replied. And that's worse. His voice dropped. I care about you. And I'm starting to lose myself inside that care. Silence pressed between them. Then her voice layered over the moment, steady, slow, like something she had practiced in her head long before she ever dared to say it. Sometimes the difference between real care and manipulation is not in how intense the feeling is, but in who keeps the power to choose. A person who truly cares asks, "What do you need?" A person who manipulates asks, "What should I do for you?" One gives freedom. The other creates dependence and calls it safety. Real care respects a no. Manipulation negotiates it until it becomes meaningless. Real care expands your world. Manipulation slowly replaces it. Real care stays calm when you grow stronger. Manipulation becomes uneasy when you no longer need protection. And the most dangerous kind of manipulation doesn't look cruel. It looks reasonable. It sounds loving. It comes from people who are certain they are right. Marcus watched her, his expression shifting. You think that's me? I think you're becoming that, she said. You think my feelings are tactics. I think your fear is dressed as responsibility. His voice hardened. So what? I'm supposed to let you walk into danger and call that respect. You're supposed to let me decide what danger is, she said. That's what respect is. You're being naive, and you're being territorial. I'm being honest, so am I. He ran a hand over his face. You met someone in a place without protection, without background checks, without oversight, and you felt safe. Yes. That should scare you. It should scare you, she replied, because it means your system isn't the only place where I can breathe. His eyes narrowed. So this is about leaving. No, she said. This is about knowing I could. That's the same thing. It's not, she whispered. Not to someone who has ever been trapped. The word lingered between them. Trapped. He straightened. You think I'm trapping you? I think you're slowly shrinking my choices, she said, and calling it concern. You want me to stop caring, I want you to stop deciding. You're asking me to watch you step into uncertainty. Yes. And if you get hurt, then it's my pain, she said. Not your justification. He looked at her like she had taken something away from him. I'm not trying to control you. I know, she said. You're trying to keep yourself calm. That landed deeper than any accusation. You're scared. She continued. Not of me leaving, of not being necessary. His lips parted, but no words came. You don't need to be my protector to matter, she said. You need to be someone who trusts me to exist without you. That's not how my world works. Then your world isn't safe for me, she replied. Another silence. Longer. He finally spoke. You don't see how much I hold back. Then stop asking me to be grateful for what you don't do, she said. That's not love. That's leverage. His eyes flashed. You think I'm using you? I think you're using your goodness as permission, she answered. He turned away. She watched his back. Strong, controlled, Shaken? Marcus, she said softly. I don't want to be the reason you feel powerful. I want to be the reason you learn restraint. He didn't respond. I won't trade my freedom for your calm, she added. I've done that before. It nearly erased me. His voice was quiet. So what are you choosing? She took a breath. I'm choosing to stay whole, whether you stay with me or not. The words didn't challenge him. They released him. And that, more than anything, terrified him. Evelyn left before sunrise, not with anger, not with drama, just a quiet bag, a folded jacket, and the kind of resolve that comes when you realize staying is more dangerous than walking into uncertainty. She didn't look back at the gates. She didn't wait for a message. She wasn't running from Marcus. She was running from the version of herself that kept shrinking to survive. 3 days later, she sat in a narrow office that smelled like old paper and cheap coffee. The walls were beige. The desk was metal. The world felt smaller, but it was hers. Tom Keller smiled when he shook her hand. Too smooth. Too quick. Your experience is impressive, he said, especially considering where you're coming from. She didn't miss the implication. Thank you, she replied. We're always happy to give someone a fresh start, he continued, as long as expectations are clear. He slid a folder across the desk. The contract was thicker than she expected. Too many pages for a warehouse logistics position. You'll notice a confidentiality clause, Tom said casually. Standard stuff. She read slower. The clause wasn't about trade secrets. It was about silence. You can't discuss internal processes, she said. That protects everyone. And I can't speak about misconduct. That protects stability. And if I refuse, his smile didn't change, then we'll have to reconsider whether you're the right fit. Her stomach tightened. This isn't legal, it's common, he replied. There's a difference. She looked up. You're asking me to trade security for compliance. I'm offering you peace, he said. Most people accept. And if I don't, you'll find life more complicated, not a threat, a prediction. She closed the folder. I need time. Take it, he said. Just don't take too long. Stability is a privilege. Outside, the air felt thinner. Freedom, she realized, didn't feel warm. It felt sharp. 2 hours later, Marcus stood in a glass office he hadn't slept in. Ethan watched him from across the table. You're under review, Ethan said quietly. Your decisions, your resource reallocations, your judgment. I protected her, Marcus replied. You blurred lines, Ethan said, and now you're paying for it. Marcus didn't answer. You can't run a system on emotion. Ethan continued. You built your power on control. You broke your own rule. She needed safety. She needed choice. Silence. That's not the same thing, Ethan added. Marcus stared at the city below. For the first time, his authority felt fragile. Back in the parking lot, Evelyn sat in her car and held the steering wheel without turning the engine. She thought of Marcus. Not with longing, with clarity. The world outside his walls wasn't kinder. It was just honest about its cruelty. Tom's office replayed in her mind. The smile, the contract, the quiet pressure. Power, she realized, didn't always shout. Sometimes it whispered until resistance felt unreasonable. That night, she wrote 2 numbers on a piece of paper. One for legal advice, one for a shelter Noah had mentioned. She didn't know if she would need either. But she wasn't walking blind. In another building, Marcus signed documents he barely read. His hands were steady. His thoughts were not. He replayed her words. I won't trade my freedom for your calm. He had always believed protection justified intrusion. Now that belief was unraveling. Evelyn sat on her bed in a rented room and counted her savings. Not much. Enough for a few weeks. She felt exposed, but alive. The next morning, Tom called. Have you made your decision? I need a revision, she said. On which part? The part where my silence becomes your power? A pause. That's not how this works. Then this doesn't work for me. You're being difficult. I'm being careful. You'll regret this. She hung up before he could finish. Her hands shook. Her spine stayed straight. Power in small spaces doesn't need weapons. It needs paperwork. It needs pressure. It needs people who believe survival means obedience. And people who leave are called unstable. 2 days later, a message arrived from Marcus. Just one sentence. Are you safe? She didn't reply. Not because she didn't care. Because she needed to know if safety could exist without permission. Marcus sat in his office long after everyone left. He wasn't losing control of his empire. He was losing the illusion that control was love. Evelyn walked past a construction site and felt the dust settle on her skin. She didn't brush it off. She let herself feel ordinary. That was the price of freedom, not comfort, not certainty, just the right to stand without asking. The wind started before the dark, dry, sharp, restless. By the time the sky turned copper, the power was already flickering. Evelyn sat on the edge of her bed and watched the light above her blink like a warning. Her phone was at 12%. The room felt smaller with every gust that hit the windows. The building creaked like it was remembering how fragile it was. She checked her wallet. Enough for food, not enough for another week. The legal emails from Tom were still unread. She didn't need to open them to know what they said. Polite words, legal language, pressure dressed as professionalism. The storm arrived without ceremony. Sand scraped against glass. The lights went out. The silence that followed felt louder than noise. Her phone lost signal. For the first time since she left, Evelyn felt truly alone. Not free, not strong, just unprotected. She locked the door, even though she knew it was useless. She sat on the floor and hugged her knees. The storm didn't care about her independence. It didn't care about her pride. It didn't care about what she was trying to prove. Her body knew something her mind kept refusing. Safety first, meaning later. She grabbed her jacket and keys and stepped outside. The wind pushed against her like it wanted her to change her mind. Dust filled her eyes. The world blurred into motion and instinct. Driving felt like swimming against a current. Every turn was a choice between danger and risk. Not courage, not romance, just calculation. When the gates appeared through the dust, her chest loosened in a way that surprised her. Not relief, recognition. This was the place her nervous system remembered as less dangerous. She didn't come back because she loved him. She came back because her brain chose the option that hurt less. The guard recognized her immediately. No questions, no radio calls, just a nod and the slow opening of steel. The lights were still on here. Backup generators, order, control. Marcus opened the door himself. He didn't step close. He didn't reach out. He didn't ask why she was there. He moved aside. Come in, he said. No command, no ownership, just space. She crossed the threshold and felt her shoulders drop before she could stop them. Her hands were shaking. He noticed but didn't comment. You can stay in the guest wing, he said. No cameras, no guards inside. If you want the door locked from your side, it will be... She looked at him. searching for the trap. There wasn't one. Not tonight. He handed her a towel. Dry. Warm. You're safe here, he said. That's all. Not you're mine. Not you belong. Just safety. Independence doesn't mean you never need anyone. It means you choose who you trust when your strength runs out. She followed him down the hall in silence. Marcus didn't walk beside her. He walked behind. Distance was the first act of care. In the guest room, he placed a glass of water on the table and stepped back. If you need anything, ask. If you don't, I won't interrupt. She nodded. That was all she could manage. After a shower, after warmth returned to her skin, she opened the door and wandered the quiet hallway. The house felt different, not powerful, quiet, waiting. A small office door was ajar, light inside. She hesitated, then stepped in. Folders lined the shelves, financial records, donation logs, legal documents. One file caught her eye, a foundation name she recognized, a support fund, emergency housing, legal aid, therapy access for survivors. She had once applied to something like this years ago. Anonymous funding, no sponsor listed. Her hands trembled as she opened the folder. Transactions traced back to shell companies. Quiet ones, clean ones. Marcus's, not recently, not after meeting her. Years ago, before obsession, before control. Before her, the man who terrified her had once funded protection without ever wanting to be seen. She closed the file slowly. The truth didn't simplify anything, it complicated it. The next morning, she found him in the kitchen, making coffee. He looked tired, human, unarmed. I saw the foundation, she said. He didn't pretend not to know. Yes. Why hide it? Because helping shouldn't buy gratitude, he replied. And it shouldn't give me access. She watched him closely. That's new, she said. No, he answered. It's what I forgot. She sat across from him, space between them. Intentional. My coming back isn't a promise, she said. I know. It's not forgiveness. I know. It's survival. He nodded. That matters more. She studied his face, searching for the man who once confused possession with protection. He wasn't gone, but he was listening. The brain of someone who's been hurt doesn't chase happiness. It scans for danger. It chooses what hurts less. It chooses predictability over hope. Returning isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the smartest move a wounded mind can make. She placed her cup down slowly. If this turns into control again, she said, I leave. You should, he replied. No argument, no negotiation, just acceptance. That was new too. Outside, the storm passed, the air smelled cleaner, the sky looked wide again. Evelyn didn't feel saved. She felt grounded, not owned, not rescued, just allowed to exist without defense for a moment. She wasn't rebuilding trust. She was rebuilding choice. Morning came quietly, not with relief, with clarity. Evelyn stood by the window and watched the light settle over the hills. The storm had passed, but the weight of the night stayed in her chest. She didn't feel romantic. She didn't feel rescued. She felt awake. Marcus waited in the living room, not pacing, not watching, just there. She walked in and didn't sit right away. This isn't about you hitting me, she said. He looked up. It never was. She continued. My fear isn't your anger. It's your kindness when it starts replacing my choices. He stayed silent. When you care for me too much, when you decide for me, when you anticipate what I need before I ask, that's when I disappear. She folded her arms, steadying herself. I'm not afraid of your power. I'm afraid of being softened out of my autonomy. Marcus nodded slowly. I confuse love with responsibility, he said, and responsibility with authority. She looked at him. That's exactly it. He stood, but not closer. He stayed where he was. In my world, power is protection, he said. Control is safety. I never learned how to love without command. She met his eyes. Then learn, or don't be near me. He breathed out, I want to learn. Silence, stretched, not heavy. Just honest. This isn't romance, she said. This is structure. I know. She began listing. Not emotionally, but clearly. I need my own space. A door that only I can lock. You'll have it. I need my own income. No contracts tied to you. I won't touch it. I need the right to say no without explaining. He nodded. I need the right to leave without you calling it betrayal. That will be respected. I need an outside line. People who know me without knowing you. He paused. That one is hard. That's the point. He accepted it. I need transparency. Cameras where there are cameras. And places where there are none. We'll map it. I need to never be interrogated again. He closed his eyes. No questioning disguised as concern. I understand. She waited. You're not proving love by holding me, she said. You're proving it by preparing for me to walk away. He opened his eyes. Loving you means building a system where you don't need me to survive. Yes. He nodded. In my world, contracts exist to prevent harm. I never thought love would need one. When power is uneven, she said, love becomes an ethical agreement. He sat down again, slower than before. You're asking me to give up the advantage. I'm asking you to make sure you never use it. She moved closer. Not to him. To the space between them. I won't promise forever, she said. I won't promise comfort. Neither will I. But I will promise structure. That's stronger than a promise of feelings. She exhaled. This will be messy. I expect it. She looked at him. Really looked. Not the man who frightened her. Not the man who saved her. Just a man being asked to change his instinct. Power changes love, she said. It turns it into responsibility, and responsibility without humility becomes control. She nodded. Love in unequal power isn't emotional, he said. It's moral. Silence again. She turned toward the camera in her mind, toward the invisible witness that was every person who had ever mistaken care for ownership. Boundaries aren't built by promises. They are built by systems. Not, I won't hurt you. But you can leave me. Not, trust me. But you don't have to. Not, I'll protect you. But you already have protection without me. Love isn't proven by holding on. It's proven by preparing for release. She faced him once more. This isn't about forever. It's about fairness. This isn't about romance. It's about discipline. This isn't about passion. It's about restraint. They didn't touch. They didn't seal anything. They built rules. And maybe that was the most loving thing either of them had ever done. So before you call something love, ask yourself, does your relationship have boundaries or only promises? Does it protect your freedom or just your comfort? Because love doesn't survive on emotion alone, it survives on structure.